The reason I bring it up, personally, I lost a nephew, not that long ago. And you read about bad heroin. Is there poisonous stuff out there?
Yeah.
And are they making any progress on finding out where it's coming from?
Yeah.
When they cut the heroin, they're adding what's called fentanyl to it, and it makes it very potent. It's highly. If it's not, they shouldn't be mixing it with it all. It's in these labs wherever they produce the heroin and they package it. They cut it with this fentanyl, and most of the drug overdose deaths occurred as a result of heroin that was tainted with this fentanyl drug, this product. And it's out there, and these drug dealers really don't care about, they don't care about life. They don't care about people. There's only one thing that drives them is the money, right? How much money they can make off of you or the next guy, all right? Whatever's cut, it's cut with it. Whatever, the makeup of it is, doesn't matter to them. Because they have no conscience, they don't, so it's a problem. But it's an ongoing problem. Very similar to the epidemic with heroin and the opiates. Cutting it with this type of drug is a big problem also. I just want to mention Putnam County recently was designated as a HIDTA county, high-intensity drug trafficking area, by the federal government. I believe Senator Schumer was involved in helping to get this county designated. And what that means is more federal money will be allocated to Putnam County to combat heroin, to pay for some of these task forces.
Does that mean, will the cars have like Narcan? Is it Narcan?
Narcan, yeah.
I believe we have, everyone, each person has it. There's 22 out of 32 of us have Narcan, and we've used it.
So
Like 3
is it the
times
kind of
so
thing
far.
if you suspect or you have to know that's what it is?
No, the person's blue and gone,
Oh, okay.
and they bring them back, hopefully.
I think
We've brought
there's
one
been
3 times, I think
Three.
we saved one person, I
Yeah.
think, but we've done it 3 times.
It is effective. It does work.
If you get to
If
the.
you get to them quick enough. Yeah, because you have to administer it pretty quick. So hopefully there's going to be some federal money that's going to be coming into Putnam to help combat this, because it really needs to be eradicated. I mean, it was around in the 60s and the 70s and the early 80s, and then it disappeared. You didn't hear about heroin use for years. Really, well, cocaine was prevalent back. Marijuana was always around. Then it was cocaine in the 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
right? Then, there was heroin, and then you didn't hear about heroin anymore. So we're hoping that this is cyclical and that it just goes away, and it just stops. But the problem is, it's such a big, profitable business for these, and and there's so much money involved in it. And so, from the growers who grow the opiate until the drug dealers, who produce it, and those on the street level that sell it. I think the punishment, they have to ratchet up the punishment for the crime, because right now I don't think it's strict and severe enough where it's going to make people think twice about dealing it and selling it. I think it's gotten to a point where the consequence for dealing drugs, you got to go to jail. Never mind the slap on the wrist, or never mind. I know drug treatment court is good and it works, it's effective, but really the drug dealers, you got to send a message to them that, hey, you're going to deal drugs, you're going to jail. Sorry, that's the chance you take. But if there's really not, the consequence isn't, that severe, then they're not worried about that. First time offense, maybe, but I don't know.
But the education
Education
we
is
have to stop it before they become addicted. And I was talking to White Plains lieutenant today, because they're going through, of course, almost the same things that we are. They called about the drug issue. He was saying with the Narcan, they want to start using their body cameras. They're thinking about playing back the video for these people, because they think that if you see that you're actually dead and blue and you came back to life, that maybe it would get to them. I don't know that will work, because if you're addicted, I don't know, but I'm sure that would be pretty telling to see yourself deceased and come back. They have those cameras on each person, which that's we're not going there. We don't even have enough money for that. That's all.
Do the cars have cameras, now that you bring that up? our 5 cars or whatever we have on the road, do they
Our
have
12
video?
Our 12 cars,
Our
I
12
think,
cars.
out of the 12, I think we have cameras in 10 of them. But now they've reached, after 5 years now, the hard drives are all crashing and we're gonna have to,
Are those mandated items though, like the school board used to get hit with, oh, you gotta do only
No.
cameras, and, okay, so it's not, so it's as you can afford it in your budget?
It's a budgeted item.
He recommends to us, and for the most part, he gets the equipment that he needs.
but those things we've done those kind of large ticket things on grants because it's like $150,000 worth of equipment. You know, we need cars first before we go in there.
Right, it's probably not.
Another question I ask you, how about the bike trail that, you know, runs quite a stretch through the town of Carmel? Are you guys gonna be still riding that once in a while or doing something when the weather gets better to try to also detour any of the issues that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think that we left money in the budget for bicycle.
Yeah, we did.
The supervisor's office, made sure that we left money to do some bike patrolling, and, we have bicycles, we have trained personnel to do it.
Sounds
We'll
good,
be
yeah.
out there.
The bike path is amazing, and I run with a couple of people, but I have to say, like, now that the weather's getting nicer, in a month or so, you're gonna have people out there early in the morning. And was there another, I think it might have been up close to Wappingers, but there was a suicide on the bike path? And
Yeah,
wasn't
it's
there
about injuries.
a body found by the salt shed not too long ago?
Over here, yeah.
Right, over here? As somebody like who's on that bike path, you get concerned, and I have seen the officers on the bicycles,
And the
and it
sheriff's
always
out.
makes you feel better.
Yeah.
But it's such a large expanse, you don't see them a lot. Like,
Yeah,
I
they have
don't,
like 20, I think, right? The sheriff's, they must have like 20 of them, they've got those
and it
Polarises
goes
and
all the
those.
way through, from like Mayapack through, and
Yeah, they'll come all the way through, I've seen them come through.
it makes you feel a lot better out there, because
Yeah.
sometimes you get it gets a little creepy in certain areas, you're way out there.
Especially that stretch from Willow Road
Yeah.
to, from south,
Jewelville?
south Willow, yeah.
All the way to.
Oh, by Hickory Bend, okay.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yes.
it's really
Yeah,
isolated
it
out
is.
there.
No, and it's a nice path, I wish that
It's
it had,
beautiful.
like porta johns or something for.
Or
people
garbage
that-
cans, I always say.
Garbage
Garbage cans and garbage cans, you get people, A, leaving their dog food bags, and B, their water bottles.
Because it's all those houses as you go
They don't
through,
have anything.
and you have people just stopping, and it's, that's something that people don't like.
Have you had any trouble with mountain bikers? I was at a meeting last night up in New Falls, and DEP properties, you can blog on where, and there's a big group in Connecticut that come over here to Ninham. And there's certain properties you're allowed on, the DEP does not want mountain biking. And they have trails and jumps and bridges
Yeah,
and
that's
everything they've done. Yeah, so the hunters were upset about erosion and the fact that here you are in your line and here comes the guy racing.
No, we're good, you know where they ride is over between, it's Mayapack School, but it's town of Putnam Valley, other side of Wood Street towards Taconic, there's a lot of rock and down there that they ride those motorcycles that have no seats, I don't know what they're called, they have these motorcycles that go up and mountain bikes all through there, but that's the sheriff's office's domain, thankfully.
Okay, I think,
That's it.
any more questions? If not, I would like to.
You patrol Stonely Avenue.
That's ours, yeah.
I never see any of those speed limit indicators units along the side of the road, ever.
On
Along
Stone.
Stone.
Yeah, we haven't had that out for this whole winter, but, yeah,
I mean, I'm thinking you may even need two of them on Stone.
well, we only have the one, I think.
Oh, geez, okay.
One way or the other, yeah.
Yeah. But, you know what it is they see it, they speed by the hospital, and then they're down at the other end going,
The
towards
Dodge
Cross
deer, I
Falls.
think, if they're speeding through there.
And that's another thing I was gonna bring up, these deer are really.
And Stone Lake
I've
is-
had 3 closes.
Yeah, they were talking about harvesting and how that goes. And, the public is mixed on it,
Yeah.
but it's gotten to an epidemic where if you want your shrubbery around your house,
I mean,
Well, there's a whole herd in the street with a golf course, there's a herd that comes through.
We try to give them tickets, but they just, they don't pay it.
But how about, somebody's I think I missed 3 deer in the last.
I can assure you, putting up the sign showing the jumping deer has nothing to do with
They don't know how to read.
tracks
Well, you know, the second problem is on 301, I know one car of them. Right down here, back to Pete's house.
They got one today. And you never see them, you know, you never see them.
I know, I've had trouble.
I had one jump on my foot and I never saw the damn thing. Really, it was.
I actually saw it on the dash cam in the woods after I did
Yeah,
it.
it was gonna-
And I'm like, now I see him. Because you can see him coming, but when you're driving, I don't see that.
But I never had an incident with a deer up until like 6 months ago. And all of a sudden, it's.
I think Westchester's a lot worse though.
Yeah.
The Taconic is terrible.
the Taconic, you know, the actual red reflectors they have further up on the Taconic in the center, are supposed to be the deer and an animal that's prey or going to, it's the red eyes. So when the cars go by, they reflect, and deer don't want to be around the predator.
Really?
They tried it. I mean, it doesn't take that much to stick them in and say, just if it spooks them, they're out of the way. Then we could all put those little whistles on the front too.
It doesn't seem to work.
We're gonna focus
Yeah,
back.
then you're in the speed trap.
Yeah,
Comment from our.
I just want to, while we're all here, I want to mention to you that last Thursday, a letter was sent to the county executive. You may have heard this, I'm not sure. It's in all the local weekly newspapers, and the Journal News called me today about it. The town board sent the letter, we all signed the letter to County Executive Odell and to the legislature, requesting that the county consider setting up a task force looking into county policing, countywide police. And let me just say that, you know, before I go any further, that this in no way is a negative reflection on our Carmel Police Department. They do an excellent job. We have no intention of downsizing them, disbanding them, or eliminating them at all. Mike and I spoke, and the board spoke about this. We are looking for cost savings to the town of Carmel residents. Even though we have an excellent police force, it's very costly to the taxpayers. And we would like the county to engage a study paid for by a grant from New York State under the Local Efficiencies Grant Program to conduct a study of efficiencies, to see if there's any efficiencies in having a countywide PD under one umbrella. But we're not going to know the answer to that, whether it would be something that is efficient or cost savings to the town of Carmel, unless this study was conducted by an outside consulting firm. And there is money on the state level for grants to do that. So the letter that we sent to the county executive indicates that we would like her to put together a task force comprised of police chiefs from all the departments that have independent police departments, Carmel being one, Kent, and the sheriff's department, and the 2 villages that have PDs, the village of Brewster and the village of Cold Spring, to sit down at the table, and also represented by elected officials and PDAs as well, because they have an interest in this, because they're the ones who are actually out, you know, patrolling the streets. So I just don't want anybody to have any misconceptions about that or misunderstandings. This is not negative at all. We believe it's a positive. And Frank said it earlier, in the 2% cap era in which we're in, we did stay under the cap for this year, for 2015, but it was very difficult. We had to make some strategic moves in order to stay under that 2% cap. But to continue to stay under that cap going forward and to show efficiencies where the residents are going to get that tax credit. So you're going to get a credit this year. It's really a check from the state. You're getting a check from the state for, I think, $350 or $400 or something like that. If we stay under it next year, that's going to increase to about $1,000 per resident from the state for the taxes. So, but we have to show efficiencies. We have to show an effort towards consolidation. We have to show an effort towards partnering and sharing of services. This recent letter that we had sent out is towards consolidation. So we are looking for efficiencies through consolidating. And that's another requirement that the state had for the towns in order for them to meet their tax cap requirements going forward. So we don't know if there's going to be efficiencies or effectiveness by doing this, but it's been talked about for many, many years. Some of you recall back in the early 80s, I think it was, police consolidation and county policing was discussed in this county, and it went nowhere. So I think we're at a time now in 2015 that we really need to take a hard look at it. The study may indicate that it's not efficient, it's not going to be a cost savings, but it may indicate that it will be. So you're going to hear about it, you'll probably read about it at some point in the newspapers, but it's something that we felt was necessary. We felt that the time was right to bring this issue forward again, and all the stakeholders are going to be involved, and we're hoping that it's going to be productive and it's going to be something that may happen. But I think the study, if it's funded, which there's no guarantees that the state is going to fund it at this point.
Requested the study.
Right, unless we requested the study. So we're hopeful that it will, but that's going to take about a year. So this is something that's not going to happen probably within the next year or two. This is something that may be 3, 4, 5 years down the road, but it has to start somewhere. So the town of Carmel initiated this by sending a letter to the county. So,
I wanted
if
to
anybody has
ask
any
you,
questions.
Paid individuals, you keep it at that point, you move them all together, and then you just transition out,
They-
and then you're done.
Yeah. So
Ken, do you have any information of what was done years ago?
I do have some, but back then, back in '82, I think it was, or '83, when it was discussed, it was
Because
a different world. It was a different world. The sheriff back then supported merging communications and, I believe, records back then. But the two towns, Carmel and Kent, and Putnam Valley, were supportive of it. And Mike's father, Mike Kazari's father, happened to be the supervisor in the town of Kent at the time. And they were supportive of it. So it is a concept that can save the taxpayers money, because there's a lot of redundancies right now in law enforcement. Because all these independent towns, including Carmel, we all have these specialized units that patrol for us. So if you merge all
services, right?
yeah. So if you merge all of those departments under one umbrella, under one county-wide model of law enforcement, there is a savings. I believe there is a cost savings, and that's going to translate into a savings to the taxpayers.
What is
Home
Westchester
control.
called? What is Westchester?
You're losing home control to have?
They're all consolidated.
Not all.
No.
Still gonna have to use the same,
You know what?
No, you'll,
still
no.
gonna have to have the force.
Carmel's still going to, there's still going to be a force here. It'll be similar to Westchester County. Westchester County has their own PD, Westchester County PD, and that works very effectively. And towns have merged with that. Ossining just did recently. Mount Kisco's in the process of merging with Westchester County PD because there's a savings. So,
Ken, how would jurisdiction differ from the sheriff's department that's county?
well, the county sheriff's department under the New York State law is required to have a civil bureau and a jail run by a sheriff. Right now, the sheriff has a road patrol and a investigative division. They're not required under the law to have that. So with that being said, the sheriff's department road patrol division and their detective division, if a countywide PD was to be formed, they would merge into that countywide PD of law enforcement. There'd still be a sheriff's department because they're required to have a jail and a civil bureau. But am I right, Pete? I think I'm correct, right? Yes, but the road patrol would be part of that county police. And nobody's going to lose their jobs. No police officers in any town or village is going to be affected by this. They're not going to be reduced. Probably the overall, if the departments are merged, let's say there's 140 or 150 police officers that become part of this countywide PD. There may be a number that is sufficient enough to patrol the county, but that could be done out of attrition. In other words, the department size could be reduced through retirements, through attrition. So as officers retire, you may not want to replace them because you may not need them under that countywide model of law enforcement. You may need them, but you may not. So we're not looking to eliminate anyone's jobs. At least I'm not. And I wouldn't be in favor of that. I probably wouldn't have even brought this up if I thought that anybody was going to lose their jobs. That's not the case. But the study will show, how many, officers will be needed to patrol Putnam County and to provide the law enforcement coverage. And by the way, some towns that don't have their own PDs right now, they may get an increased presence in their towns by having a countywide PD. So there's still a lot that we need. This is going to be, evolving because it's so new. This request just came out last Thursday. But this is not, it's not unusual or not unique that this is going on, is if you go on the local government efficiencies website from the state of New York, there are many counties and towns in the state of New York right now that have applied for grant funding to look into consolidation. Because that's the buzzword, we've all heard it. And a lot of elected officials use that at meetings. You hear them say, consolidation, sharing, partnering. But we're just not talking about it, we're actually doing it. We're actually trying to accomplish something and save the taxpayers' money. So it's just not, we're not talking the talk, we're really walking the walk.
Could that be done on the highway department level?
It could, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Pete. There's other areas of consolidation that could occur also. Consolidating assessing units. Each town has their own assessor. You know, perhaps we can consolidate the assessing function and also the receiver of taxes. Each town has receiver of taxes. It could be, you know, consolidation of receivers and that function, you know, could be rolled into one, consolidated for savings, you know, to the taxpayers also. We have to look to where we can save money. We're no longer sustainable, all right? It's, you know, and you hear it all the time. Taxes are out of control, you know, and they're right. The taxes are high, and the school districts are the ones driving the taxes. And I was on the school board.
Here we go, the town always points to the school district.
No, but
It's
you know.
true, the large majority of your taxes
But
are from your school district.
You know what I'd like to see? I really envision a regional superintendent of schools.
I was gonna ask that.
Eliminate all these every school district has a superintendent. They have two assistant superintendents. And there's assistants to the assistant superintendents.
Where would this start, to start that movement? Because it would be the same thing in
It
the
would
police
be,
department.
we should have a regional administrative office with a regional
It
superintendent.
used to be that way.
Yeah.
One post.
Yeah, so there is a savings there also, but it's
I mean,
got to.
schools wouldn't change, but it would be, like you say, an umbrella where they all work under the
Right,
same.
and there's probably.
What about water sewer? What about really putting it together as far as highways and DPW?
Well, a DPW, yeah, we've actually, Frank, I know, we've talked about the DPW. You know,
What's
we,
DPW?
Department of Public Works.
Public Works.
Oh, okay.
We've talked about it and actually looked into it a little bit. We've looked into it, what other, you know, but the initial cost to doing that for the trucks and for, you know, all those kind of things, at this point, you know, might be a little prohibitive. But it's definitely something that should be looked into, but I think the upstart cost of that, you know, for example, for the town of Carmel to start the Department of Public Works and have, you know, garbage trucks and all kinds of, would be pretty expensive. You know, early on.
Well, we have a very large infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure in Carmel. We have 8 sewer districts and 14 water districts. You know, from the hamlet of Carmel's got Carmel Water 2 and Sewer District 2. You know, it's up here, you're really reliant on Lake Lenina's water. You know, and by the way, we're going to fight the city of New York. We want to take on that fight with them, a legal challenge. We want to stop paying for water out of Lake Lenina. It's $500,000 a year or $600,000 a year. We have to buy water.
And then go back to it.
Then, by the way, we treat it and give it back to them. It goes through our microfiltration plants and is discharged into the brook behind Pike Plaza, and it runs out into the reservoir off of, I think, is it Croton Falls Reservoir?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we buy
pay
it,
for it
we
first.
pay it for it, treat it, and give it back to them. Perhaps maybe cleaner, I don't know, because it goes through a microfiltration plant and it's discharged back. They should give us a credit back for that water.
Maybe we should bottle it and sell it.
You know, so we have, the board, with our attorney, Greg Fulchetti, we have discussed challenging New York City on that. You know, and we're also, I should probably mention, we're looking for alternative water sources at the same time. Perhaps a well field somewhere with enough wells that we drill that could produce 1 million gallons of water a day, because that's what we use in Carmel, in the hamlet of Carmel, about 1 million gallons a day. So well fields could do it, Lou, right? It could.
More people.
It could happen. That's a possibility. That's one alternative that we're looking at. And the other alternative is Lake Mayapack, running a main from here to Lake Mayapack, because Lake Mayapack is owned by the state. It's not owned by the city. So we would just tap into Lake Mayapack and, you know, run it, pump it up up here to the hamlet of Carmel, perhaps, that's another option. It's costly at first, though. It's going to be very costly to run a main from here to Lake
Well, they're
Mary.
setting up the whole plant and everything right at the beginning to get enough water, volume of water would be.
But if you aggregate out the amount that we're paying the city, $500,600,000 a year over 20 years,
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. The only other thing I've mentioned to quite a few people once in a while, the town got together, made one water district. You can almost tie them together. And thus have a couple of different little plants pushing into the same system. And you look at it from right now, from Drewville Road to the town hall, what are you looking at, 2 miles of water line?
yeah,
And actually that would tie another system right in right there. And on the way down Drewville Road, you'd be picking up, and over Watermelon, you'd be picking up 3 water districts on top of it.
right now New York City has us nowhere, right?
Yeah. That's
And we're
And they haven't used a drop of that water in 30 years.
they don't use that water. New York City doesn't use that water.
It doesn't run
It
into
doesn't
West
run
Branch.
into it. When West Branch is overflowing, they can open the gates, and run water back into Lake Lanai. Could run it, flow it this way.
Well, first off, Lake Lanai flows into West Branch. The only way they can do that is they gotta have it about 6 inches from breaking the dam down on Belden Road, pull the gates for it to backflow. And I don't think it's flown out now in almost 20 years.
But we actually pulled those stop shutters a few years ago.
Yeah,
We
they
did.
do it every once in a
We
while.
pulled them and we were backfeeding, the water was coming from West Branch.
Orange end, yeah, but
Yeah.
to do it, normal gravity is from Glenida to West Branch. Now, for them,
This lake hasn't been high enough to do that.
no more.
Time.
You gotta get, Glenida has actually been down, they can bring it up 3 feet, but Glenida, for it to go the other way, has to come up a total of 5 feet. So they have another 2 feet to go for it to go the reverse. Now, due to the 1 million gallons of water a day we're pulling out, this hasn't flown out in about 20 years. At the safe yield, when I was working there, they said it was 500,000. We started hitting 7 and 8, all of a sudden it slowly started not flowing out. That's what I heard when I was working at, the city said at 500,000, and now at 500,000 a day, it was flowing over the stop cutters,
Going from,
Going into West Branch.
going into West Branch.
and it would used to go over there from approximately, I'd say September right on through to June. Then normal water, due to the water table, would drop down because Glenida spring fed. Then it would slow down. Then it would start coming back in September again. And this is when I was growing up. I can remember that. You didn't want to go over there, not want to go ice skating, otherwise you'd fall in.
How did the city wind up taking possession of Lake Lanai? When did they,
That
did they
goes
always?
back to the
1870.
back then, when they bought it, to increase their watershed. I read something somewhere down the line, it was a good idea that they did, because at that point, the lake was almost polluted.
Well, they had pig farms and everything else.
That, they were dumping sewer into it, and people finally were digging their own wells, they weren't taking the water out of it because it was almost polluted. And
All the houses were right on the lake.
Maybe we couldn't take it back through adverse possession or something like that.
I don't know why they still want it.
Oh, you know what? Just, why don't they do us a favor, just deed it back to us?
Why do they still want it if they can't use it?
Why? Because it's a revenue generator. They own it, they own it. They are paying they're paying taxes on it, on all their property. They're the largest taxpayer in the town of Carmel. But this reval that we're doing, the reval is gonna pick them up. They're gonna wind up, all their properties are gonna be adjusted up, because they haven't been revalued since 1996, was the last reval in Carmel. And they've done a lot of improvements to their properties. I mean, look at what they did to the Croton Falls Dam. Have you been down there? They put a big structure up there. And also those trailers that are on Route 6 by Shaft 10, those trailers should be permanent structures. They've been there long enough. They were construction trailers. They're still there. And the DEP has offices. They're actually working out of those trailers every day. DEP staff. So they're currently not paying taxes on those, property taxes on those trailers. But they should be permanent structures now. And the reval, we've asked the reval people, Vision Properties, to make sure when they're looking at the DEP property, the dams, and the reservoirs, the shorelines, that they make sure that they, revalue that property accordingly.
Are we halfway through that process now? Where are we?
What process,
The reval?
I know, they've been to my
No,
house,
I don't even
we're
think-
getting visited.
I don't think we're halfway yet. There's about 6,000 properties have been visited so far, and we have 13,000 parcels, so maybe, yeah, we're close. We're close, yeah, we're close. So if they come knocking on your door,
They already did.
Yeah.
okay,
Twice.
they are the data collectors. They're gonna ask to come in,
They did.
but you do not have to let them in.
I love them, you know what, because I'm just glad I want everybody to evaluate.
We went to sub, so
I'm
we
pro,
can.
I'm pro, we got.
I mean, I don't want to, I mean, unless you have any specific questions about the reval, it's ongoing.
No, it's
We're not gonna have the values until,
a couple years, right?
Yeah.
By the time it hits the schools, it'll
Yeah,
be
so,
probably 2 or 3 years.
it- all right, this really turned into a town hall meeting.
Like,
And I guess
But
I
don't bring him in.
I created,
Who
I
invited him
created some
anyway?
of that.
It wasn't me.
Who invited him?
himself.
You said you wouldn't sit here.
All right.
Tell Mr. Lee that I said hi.
All right, so does anybody else have any questions? I think we covered a lot today.
It really is, I think it was
Very
very productive.
Yeah.